Lam Natseach Mizman David. Yancho Adonai b'yom tzara. Yisagevcha Shem Elohei Yakriv. Yishlach Ezrecha Mikodesh u'Metzin Yisadeka. Yizker Kol Minchesecha v'Oiloscha Yidashna Sela. Yitin Lecha Chilvavecha v'Chol Atzoscha Yimali. Neran Rabbi Shua Secha v'Shem Eloheinu Nidger. Yimali Adonai Kol Mishalesecha. Ata Yedaiti Ki Yeshia Adonai Meshicha Yanehu Mishmei Kotchei B'Gvurais Yesha Yiminai Eile Barechev Veile Basusim Anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Nazkir Hema Korov Nafolu Anachnu Kamnu V'Nasedod Adonai Yeshia Amelech Yaneinu V'Yem Kareinu. Okay, so we're starting a new mimer today. This Sefer. Day one. Good morning. Welcome back.
Thank you.
The mimer we're starting, Esther, is the Kuti Torah, Adam Yakriv. Maybe you have the book, it's called Transforming Inner Self. That's the book. As I told you, we have about 8 days of classes from now until the special Pesach program. And we're going to try to learn and finish this mimer these 8 days. And after that, we're going to start with the Pesach, which means we'll have a class every day. Thank you very much. Every day that we are going to be covering Pesach. Chassidus. What does it say in Chassidus about Pesach? And that'll be every day from 11 to 12. Okay, if I can bother someone, you're the closest to give this out. I have a workbook that comes with it, but this will do for today. I want to give an introduction about this mimer and why we're learning it. It's been mentioned more than once that Tanya is referred to as the Torah Shebeksav of Chassidus, which means thank you. It's the written Torah of Chassidus, which means everything that's found in Chassidus from the Mittel Rebbe, even from the Alter Rebbe, Mittel Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, Rabbi Marash, Rabbi Rashav, the previous Rebbe, and our Rebbe, all of it, you can find the source in Tanya. Tanya includes it all. But just like with the revealed part of Torah, there's the written Torah, and then there's the oral Torah. The written Torah is the Chumash, and all the swarm of the Tanakh, of the prophets. The oral Torah is the Mishnah and the Gemara. So too, in Chassidus, there's also, what is it considered the oral Torah? It's two swarm by the Alter Rebbe, and it's Maimarim explaining each parsha according to Chassidus. One is called Torah Or, and one is called the Kuti Torah. And even though they're two svarim, but they're really one, just two volumes. And for some reason unknown to us, there are two names. But one sefer covers all the parshas from Bereshis through Shmos, and the other one covers all the parshas from Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvorim, and Shir HaShirim. And on each one, there's a mimer, Chassidus, and every generation later, they expounded on these maimarim. So it's like the oral Torah of Chassidus. So the men and Bachrim, how do they start learning Chassidus? They start with Tanya, like everybody else. Then the next step is to start learning a mimer. The first mimer that almost all places begin with is this mimer. I'm not sure the reason. I think it's also connected to the fact that the custom used to be years ago, and it still is now to some extent, is that when you start teaching a child Torah, instead of starting from Bereshis, you start from Vayikra. So even though today they start from Bereshis, they'll also, the first class will be on the pasuk in Vayikra. So that starting with Vayikra. This too, this is on a pasuk in Vayikra. And it's not just Vayikra, it really explains the whole concept of korbanos, sacrifices. Good morning. So there's a lot of things here that are more introductory, written by the people who translated. But we're going to start with page 25. Yeah, please, you don't mind putting that on that table so whoever walks in can also take it, yes? Yeah. Take one of those. Yeah. So, as you know, we're finishing the Chumash Shemos this Shabbos. We're making a siyum. It's called Shabbos Chazak, as we finish. And the next Shabbos, we're starting the Chumash of Vayikra. So the first sheet that you have here, that's the Mamar, begins with the pasuk in this sheet. Which pasuk is it? It's the second pasuk of which means it's right at the beginning of the entire Chumash of Vayikra. And it says like this: Vayikra al Moshe, God called to Moshe and he said to him, Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people, V'amarta aleim, tell them, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban Hashem. If a person amongst you will bring a sacrifice to Hashem, min ha-behema, he'll bring it from the animals, min ha-bakar, from cattle, min ha-tzayin, or from the flock of sheep, takriv was korbanchem, you shall bring your sacrifices. So sacrifices are basically from cattle and from sheep. And the Mamar is all on this first pasuk base. That's the inside. A Hovin, it is necessary to understand. He starts off speaking in a language which is third person, not saying you, but if a person will bring a korban, Adam ki Yakriv, lashon nister. Nister means it's hidden. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about someone else. But v'siyim, and then this verse. This sentence ends speaking directly. It says, Takriba, you should bring your korban. Why does the language change, or does the grammar change in the middle? That's the first question. The second question is, the pasuk says, Adam ki yakriv, person, if he will bring a sacrifice. Yakriv is lashon yachid, singular. What does it conclude? Then it says, takrivu, as korbanchem, you will bring your korban l'sharabim. That's plural. Why does that change? It's very strange. It's one pasuk. This is the beginning of the pasuk, this is the end of the pasuk, and the language changes. It starts off speaking in third person, then it speaks direct. Starts off speaking singular, then it turns into plural. Another question, a third question. V'gam the Mamar, it should have said, Milas mikem, this word mikem, from you, where does it belong? It belongs kaidem kiyakir, before the word you will bring a sacrifice. In other words, what is it saying here? If a person amongst you will bring a sacrifice. But instead, what does it say? If a person will bring a sacrifice from amongst you. The word amongst you belongs before, not after the word sacrifice. It should have been adamikem, if a person amongst you, from you, ki Yakriv will bring a sacrifice, and such is the halach. So he's going to introduce now is a very basic principle, fundamental idea in Chassidus, that the whole idea of korbanos is not only about a gashmizik animal being brought as a sacrifice, but really it's alluding to, and there's a much deeper meaning to it, it's about a ruchnizik sacrifice on a personal level. That's known. Every year has two souls. Nefesh Elokis, the Nefesh Bahamis. The godly soul and the animal soul. Nefesh Elokis, Shorsha Mebchinas Adam. Nefesh Elokis, its roots are from the level which is called Adam. God created man in his image. This is a pasuk in Bereshis that Hashem created man in his image. What does it mean in his image? Hashem doesn't have an image, and definitely doesn't have nose and eyes and ears and mouth and organs like we do. Chas v'shalom. So what does it mean man was created in his image? So obviously it means there's a certain level in the spiritual realm. And that level, that spiritual level, is made up of many details. And that spiritual level is called Adar. The human being down here is a reflection of that level Adar up there. And every part of our body has a counterpart up there, which means just like we have eyes in that spiritual realm, there's something which is similar or the source of our eyes. And there's something which is the source of our teeth, the source of our hands, source of our legs, source of our nose and ears and every organ in the body. So that is a spiritual thing. And we are physical, but these physical things, they originate in a spiritual source. And because that source has the same infrastructure as a human being, we call that level Adam. Where do we find that there's a spiritual level that's called Adam? So turn the page of these sheets, turn this around, look at the second sheet. Wrong copy. Oh, they made one more page. Okay. Okay, but anyway, it's something which you heard about before. I wanted to show it to you inside. It always helps to see it inside. It looks like either in the original or this morning, I made a mistake. And that is, on the first day of Shavuos, as you see here, we read the Haftorah, something from Yecheskel. This is considered one of the most amazing, outstanding prophetic visions amongst all the prophets. And Yecheskel saw what was called the Merkava, the chariot. Now again, everything it says here doesn't mean he saw it physically, because up there's no physical wagons, there's no physical animals, but it means he saw something in the spiritual realm, which is the source of all these things here. And what did he see? He saw a chariot, which is like a wagon. On the chariot, there's a person or something like a person sitting. And the wagon is being pulled by 4 animals. And there are 4 faces. One is the face of a lion, one is the face of an eagle, one is the face of a ox, and one is the face of a man. That's what it says there. If you turn the page, there's a little diagram here. This is homemade, so I just put this together. And this is what it looks like. And this is what the Mamar is going to explain. I'm first explaining the first half of the page. There's Adam Ha'elyon. It's called the supernal Adam, not Chas v'Shalom Adam down here. It's a level up there that's called Adam. And the Adam is sitting on a kisei, on a throne. And the Adam with the throne is on a Merkava, on a chariot, on a wagon. And in this wagon, there are 4 faces of this is sort of animals that carry it. Pnei Aryeh means the face of a lion. Pnei Nesher is the face of an eagle. Pnei Shur is the face of an ox. Pnei Adam is the face of a person. And why and what does it really mean? So it's explained that this is not Chas v'Shalom animals, these are malachim. These are angels. And why are certain angels called lions or eagles? Because these angels, they're the source for a lion down here. And those angels, that's the source for eagle down here. And ox is a source for the ox down here. But not only ox, a lion is actually considered the king of all wildlife. So all the wild animals come from this lion. All the birds come from the king of all the birds, which is the eagle. And all the domestic farm animals, they come from the ox. What are the Pnei Adam? We'll soon see what comes from the Pnei Adam. So, when it says that man was created in his image, what does it mean, his image? It means in the image of this Adam, of Adam Elyon that's over here. And there's a sheet there that goes along with it. It's explained in another place. That's a reference. This level of Adam, how does it evolve? Lamata, to come down here. Why they pchinas pnei Adam shebemakov. Okay, so this is the second part of this diagram. That the nefesh kiss that you see over here, the source of the nefesh kiss is from the face of the Adam. And this Adam comes from Adam Elyon. The source of the nefesh Bahamis comes from these three: the lion, the eagle, and the ox. And they are animals, even though these are angels, but they're angels because they're the source of the animals. So everything comes from here, but the difference is the Nefesh Elokis comes from the face of the Adam, and the Nefesh Bahamis comes from the face of the three animals. Now, even that is too lofty and too spiritual that from it would evolve a Nefesh Bahamis down here. So there's another level in between where it says Shmorei Efanim. Shmorei Efanim, what is that? It means that the waste, just like Begashmias, when you have something, food, there's the actual food itself, and then there's the whatever's left over, the waste of the food. The waste is insignificant to the food itself. This is the part that you can't eat. Even in the body, this food goes into the body, and there's a part of the food that is nutrition for the body, and there's the part of the food which is waste, so the body rejects it. Same thing in Shemayim, the Malachim, there's a level of the Malachim which is the actual level of godliness. Then there's a level which is, comparatively speaking, like waste. So it's the lowest level of the Malachim. From that lowest level of these angels, which is the lion, the eagle, and the ox, that evolves into an Nefesh Bahamis. Nilkacha Mishmarei Efanim, it comes from the waste of the Efanim, so the source comes from the face of the ox, or the face of the lion, or the face of the eagle. As later, of course, we'll see why it's important to bring all this in. But first, we're putting down the foundation. Foundation is that we have two souls, and both souls come from Hashem, of course. But the difference is, and they both come from that level where there's an Adam and a throne and a chariot and animals. But the difference is that the Nefesh Elokis comes from the Adam that's sitting on the throne. The Nefesh Bahamis comes from the Malachim that are carrying the throne. And both of them don't evolve directly, but they have a level in between. The Nefesh Elokis doesn't go directly from the Adam Elyon, but is in the middle, Pnei Adam, the face of an Adam. And Nefesh Bahamis doesn't go directly from these three. In the middle, there's Shmarei Efanim. There's the lower level, the waist. The Tachlis Yeridis and Neshama La'olam, the ultimate purpose why the Neshama comes down to this world, Nefesh Bahamis, is that the purpose is to elevate Nefesh Bahamis in order to discipline the Nefesh Bahamis and subdue the Nefesh Bahamis and to transform the Nefesh Bahamis. So this we know from other places, especially from Basilagani. By the way, Basilagani is based a lot on this Maimer. So we know that there's two things of how you can elevate the Nefesh Bahamis. One is by subduing the Nefesh Bahamis, which means the Nefesh Bahamis is still an animal, and it has all the desires for animalistic things, but I have the reins in my hand, and I'm controlling it. I'm not letting the animal do animalistic things. That's also an accomplishment. The second level is hapcha, that I transform the animal. That the animal soul is no longer an animal soul. It becomes like the godly soul. You know, when the Alter Rebbe was studying Chassidus by his Rebbe, which is the Maggid the Mezrich, he had a very good chavrusa. Anyone know who his chavrusa was? Who was the Alter Rebbe's chavrusa when he was studying by the Maggid the Mezrich? Right. His name was Rabbi Abram. He was the son of the Maggid the Mezrich, but he also had a nickname. He used to call him the Malach, the angel. Why was he called the angel? Because he hardly lived like a human being. He hardly ate, he hardly slept, he hardly took care of his gashmistic needs. He lived in a very spiritual plane. The truth is that his own father was not in favor of it. He kept reprimanding him, and he told him that the famous quote that the body is very precious to Hashem, and you have to take care of the body. And the famous quote was a small, in Yiddish it was a klein lechel in guf is a greis loch in the neshama, which means a little tiny hole in the body is even a bigger hole in the neshama. So this is something we spoke about when we learned about Yom Kippur and other things, that years ago, one of the ways of tshuva was self-mortification, to go through certain things that the body should be sort of beaten down. And if the body is beaten and crushed and weak, then the neshama comes out strong. And the Baal Shem Tov taught that today we don't serve Hashem that way. The body has to be strong and serve Hashem with the body. So the Maggid said, not only that if you do that to the body, you're not going to gain anything spiritually, but if you do a little tiny harm to your body, you think you're gaining spiritually, you're doing even more harm to your neshama. But nevertheless, this was his chavrusa. And in fact, there were a few times when they were learning together where the Alter Rebbe said that he saw that the Malach was so overcome from what they were learning that he almost expired. And one time he forced him to wash his hands and eat a bagel with butter so he'd be grounded again. He saved his life. When the Alter Rebbe left, the Maggid went out to say goodbye. He got onto the wagon, and the Maggid's son, not the Maggid's son, the Rabbi Malach, said to the wagon driver in Yiddish, Schmeiß the Pferd, as on wissen as ein Pferd. Then he said, Schmeiß the Pferd, bis on werden ois Pferd. Translating that in English, he said, whip the horses so they should know that they're horses. Then he said, and whip the horses until they'll no longer be horses. Alter Rebbe said, when he heard this, he heard two paths in Avodas Hashem. One is to whip the horse, meaning the Nefesh Bahamis. They should know that he should know that he's a horse. That's one level. That's the level where you're disciplining the Nefesh Bahamis. The higher level is that you whip the horse until he's no longer a horse. That Nefesh Bahamis becomes like a Nefesh Elokis. And he decided, I'm going to go back and learn more until I understand these two paths in Avodah. But what these two paths are is really Iskafia and Isapta. Yep.
So this transform the animal soul, is that the whole thing with trying to take the animal soul's passion?
Yeah, right. There was once a group of Hasidim that were traveling to Lubavitch. And they stopped off to relax a little bit. They got back on the wagon, and something very strange happened. The horses wouldn't budge. And they tried every trick in the book. They couldn't get the horses to move. So what do? He sat down to Fabring, take some l'chaim. So the discussion broke out amongst the Hasidim. Some Hasidim said, these horses are misnagdim. They're anti-Hasidus. Look, they don't let us travel to the Rebbe. So the other group said, no, they're actually Hasidic horses. They decided no longer to be horses. They don't want to function as horses anymore. That's a higher level in Avodah. It's hapcha. How does this happen? They never shall kiss. Hamas labeshes, by the never shall kiss, investing itself in the nevesh Bahamas. Mizbeinenes b'Hashem echad, meditates on oneness of Hashem. When is that? B'kriyah Shema, Shema Yisrael, and you say Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem echad. By Deizeh v'ahavta b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzrecha. So if you look at the Shema, we see that the first pasuk says v'ahavta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'edecha. And but before that we say Shema Yisrael. So what does it mean? Shema Yisrael is meditating in the greatness of Hashem and the oneness of Hashem, that Hashem and the world is really one. When I think about that and I understand it properly, then my Nefesh Bahamis also gets to love Hashem. So this is based on the Gemara, where the Gemara says, why does it say B'chol levavcha? According to pure Hebrew grammar, it should have said Libcha, or your heart. And the answer is, it means with both hearts. The Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Bahamis. But there's one word here which is a key word, which not only is not noticed, but I think, if I'm allowed to say, that I would use a different word for the translation than they use here. I'm talking about the word Hamislabeshes. Look at this, where it says, Nefesh Elokis, Hamislabeshes, Nefesh Bahamis. I think we spoke about it by Bosa Lagaina, but let me know if you remember. If not, I'll go over it again, or at least briefly. And that is, how can I know if the reason why I'm passionate about Hashem is because this passion is coming from my godly soul, or that I succeeded that my animal soul is passionate? In other words, I feel now, I'm davening, and I feel fire for Hashem. I'm on fire with love for Hashem. How do I know if it's my godly soul or my animal soul? And it says here, with both of your hearts, but how can I tell if this is my godly soul, animal soul?
Yeah.
Oh, so the answer is, it depends, how did I get there? How do we get to generate this passion is through thought, through meditation. If I think about the greatness of Hashem, that gets me to get excited. So the question is, that's why he says the word Hamislabeshes. This only happens when the Nefesh Elokis invests itself in the Nefesh Bahamis and thinks about Hashem in a way that the Nefesh Bahamis could relate to it. Which means there's one way of thinking about the greatness of Hashem, which could be very deep, very lofty, and that part of me, which is the animal part of me, can't even relate to it. And therefore wouldn't get excited. We gave the mushals that you're doing Miftzayim, and you ask a woman to light Shabbos candles, and she asks you what's behind it, and you say that, it says in Chassidus that Shabbos is a sphere of Malchus. And Malchus is a very high sphere. And when you light the Shabbos candles, you're bringing the light of Malchus shines in the whole world. If she gets excited, it's a miracle. The miracle is that you got her Nefesh Elokis excited. Her Nefesh Bahamis wouldn't be excited about it. But what if you tell her that Shabbos, when you light Shabbos candles, you bring a certain godly light into the home, and that godly light brings a blessing to the wife, to the mother, to the children. And she says, that sounds so beautiful. Okay. What you did is you explained something about this mitzvah in a way that the Nefesh Bahamis could relate to it. Or even things that are not talking about physical reward or materialistic reward. Just like if you speak about Hashgacha Pratis, you look around your day and you say, could you imagine what happened yesterday? I needed something and I happened to walk outside. I met someone that I haven't seen in 3 years, and they happened to be the one that I needed to get in touch with, and I didn't know how to do that, and Hashem led me to it. So they're thinking about Hashem, but in a way that my Nefesh Bahamis could also get excited. But if I would be meditating on a subject like trying to understand the difference between the infinite light and the finite light, like we learned in class the other day, well, I'll tell you something even better. Imagine if you're talking about the two levels of infinity that we learned about when we came to Purim. There's an infinite that's limited, and there's an infinite that's unlimited. The Nefesh Bahamis will not get excited about that. So therefore, this is the rule. If I want my Nefesh Bahamis to get excited, I have to meditate on subjects that are closer to my Nefesh Bahamis. Reminds me also of a story where there was a chassid. There were two chassidim by the Tzemach Tzedek. One was called Rabbi Hillel Paracher, very big chassid, and one was called Rabbi Pesach Malastovka. The difference between the two was Rabbi Hillel Paracher was more focused on avodah, on self-refinement, and Maimorim that deal with these kind of things to refine the Nefesh Bahamis. Rabbi Pesach was the chassid that focused more on the deep philosophical concepts of Chassidus. So Rabbi Hillel Paracher once met the students of Rabbi Pesach, and he said to them, "So what are you learning about now?" So he said, "We're learning about the infinite light of Hashem before the tzimtzum, before the first tzimtzum. That's about as far out you can go." So he said to them, "Is midvos daventir? So what are you davening with? In other words, if you're thinking about such lofty subjects, how's that going to get you anywhere in your davening?" So they answered, when we say Baruch Atah Hashem, we know who we're talking to. In other words, that's going to affect my davening. That when I say Baruch Atah Hashem, I'll be inspired with awe because I understand how infinite Hashem is. Okay, so being that the whole purpose of the Shema and the Tefillah and the davening is not just to be inspired. This is really the key point of the whole Maimer. The whole purpose is to get my Nefesh Bahamis inspired. So that explains a number of things. So let's go to the next paragraph. Yes.
Don't very intellectual people who love these type of things and it makes them all excited. Those people, wouldn't they have to think about those type of stuff rather than the very mundane?
I mean, if a person like that, you'll say that's his Nefesh Bahamis gets excited about things that are so lofty, philosophical. It's true, but I guess what we would need to do is find a way to connect those lofty philosophical concepts to practical things. The Rebbe always used to use this term. He said the Friedrich Rebbe used the word ubechein. Like when you finish thinking about something, then you say to yourself, and therefore what? In other words, let's say the example we just gave. Someone is meditating on the light of Hashem that existed before creation, that was included in Hashem's essence. That light is infinite. How does that relate to my Nefesh Bahamis, to anger, to jealousy, to humility, to not being lazy, to being kind to other people? It's so lofty. So I think if a person would think about that, they'd have to work much harder, but they could, to find the connection between these lofty concepts and inject it somewhere that would talk to me about practical things in life. When you learn and you study about things that are more connected to us down here, it becomes more natural. Like if you think about Hashgacha Pratis, it's natural. Oh, if everything's Hashgacha Pratis, I shouldn't get so upset when this happens or that happens. Hashem is running the show. Yeah.
When we're davening, before we daven and we're contemplating Hashem, the prayers have all this about blessings of Shema, contemplating the universe and all that. But if we get excited more about Hashgacha Pratis rather than the vastness of the universe, should we still be trying to get excited about the vastness of the universe?
Well, first of all, it's not that we try to get excited. We have to understand Hashem's greatness no matter what we're thinking about, because that'll always enhance whatever it is I'm going to think about. The more I understand Hashem's greatness, that'll enhance even when I think about the things that are sort of lower things, more related to me. So in the davening, there's plenty of things that do apply to us very practically. And at the same time, we also think of the question is, where do I get stuck on? Do I get stuck on the lofty things and float away? Or do I get stuck on the part that's more related to the practical?
When you say stuck, you mean
Where do I invest the depth of my thought? Ach koidem krishma, before we read the Shema, tiknu chachamim stein lefanel. The way our siddur is set up is that before you say the Shema, there's two brachas. And this is something the reading of the Shema every day is a mitzvah sasem in the Torah. It's in the Torah that every day you're obligated to read the Shema. But it was the sages, the ones who wrote the siddur, and they're the ones who instituted that before you say the Shema, you should say the other brachas, which we have in our siddur. Yetzer V'Recheshech, Avaselem, how Hashem loves us, or the brachas that talk about the angels. Why? In other words, what they did by putting that in was that they were providing us with material to meditate on, that when we say the Shema, we will get excited about Hashem, with love for Hashem. Ki Efsher, but there's something more specific about it. And especially this part of the Shema. I guess we'll have to leave it for tomorrow. But this part before the Shema in the Siddur, what does it talk about? Angels, right? Srafim, Chayes, and the angels say Kaddish, and the angels say Baruch. And why are we meditating on the angels? There's actually a letter where someone wrote to the Frierdiker Rebbe 2 questions on a Mamar. And the Frierdiker Rebbe writes back to him, the question you asked me about the angels, I'm not going to answer you because that's not related to you. You're not an angel. But the questions you asked me about davening, that I'll answer you. That relates to you. So why are we meditating on the angels? Based on what we said before, that our Nefesh Bahamas actually evolves from the angels, it'll be understood. Because there's a rule that in order to conquer something, you really have to reach into its source and into its essence. There's something in Tanya, I'm going to stop here, there's something in Tanya, but it's from Gemara, but it's actually one of the fundamentals of Chassidus also, and that is that you use wood to chop wood. How do you chop wood? With an axe. What's an axe? A piece of metal. But the piece of metal has to have a handle. Where do you get the handle from? The wood. So we're using wood to chop wood. So there's a principle in Chassidus that sometimes you have to use an element from the thing that you're trying to conquer in order to conquer it. And I think that's what the the injections that they give to bring people to be immune to certain diseases, that's what it's all about. They take something from that disease and they inject it, and that helps you become immune. But Baruch Nisa means that in order to elevate something, to conquer something, to transform something, the deepest way of doing it is by taking something from its own element and using it to overcome it. Okay, to be continued.
question, but I saved it.
You can the question. Oh, so Rabbi Ozdemir did text me. Let me see if anything changed. I don't know if he's going to make it or not going to make it. So I don't know. If he shows up, that means he made it. If he doesn't show up, it means he didn't make it. Yeah.
So I understand the contemplating the source, but when we talk about the source is the waste of the animal, of the angels, the love flows. I think that's a new concept that I've heard, and it's harder to get inspired when we think about it's the waste.
So we go to the ultimate source. The ultimate source are the angels themselves.
If the source of the malachim, it at least going.
But that's a question about everything in Chassidus. Why do we say this is the source? Ultimately, Hashem is the source.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Asma itself is the source for everything. So we use the source, it means that source that's more openly, more consciously related, has influence on defining it and giving it all the characteristics that it has. That's where it comes from.
Now I know what your windows are. Oh, no, thank you for coming, going on. I did.
No, when you called me, I was like, oh, that's probably what she's calling about. I forgot to take them. Thank you though.
I guess there's a lot of. I'm a little confused, but I think it's. We're gonna talk to her. Around.
Literal.
How much yours?
Yeah.
Sounds like you didn't spend more time with her. Huh? It seems like you didn't spend more time.
Yeah, should we listen? Oh, you didn't see this? Sorry. Yeah, I thought you had. Oh, let's